For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson. Over the weekend, Monique appeared on Bernie's Daughters podcast with Janice McCullough. For those who don't know, Janice is the daughter of the late and great Bernie Mac, and she's just started her own podcast, where she's hosting conversations about life and legacy with some of her father's former peers, like Cedric the Entertainer and Monique. During the conversation, the Queen of Comedy would go viral for her stance on why she calls her husband, Sidney Hicks, daddy.
And a lot of Black women would say, why do you call him daddy? Because he's raising me. My father probably stopped giving me what I needed when I was around 13 years old. So now you got a woman that's 13, and now I'm 35, and now I got a bunch of money, what we consider to be a bunch of money. Let me just be real clear about that, okay? Now I got this money. Now I'm taking care of everybody. Who gonna check me, boo? Who gonna make me grow up? But when that man, when we were just best friends and when we got together, this is what he said to me. He said, when we were best friends and you were married to other men, you were not my responsibility. You were my sister, but not my responsibility. As my wife, you are my responsibility.
Now, Monique has explained this before, but that wouldn't stop social media from providing thoughts on their own, both in support and against what Monique had to say. Several users in the Instagram comments of both the Bernie's Daughters podcast and the Shade Room said, I think raising was the wrong word. Your husband is helping you grow. You already raised yourself. Also, a lot of women call their man daddy. I mean, your father literally passes you off to the man in marriage. This is why we got a generation of unmarried and unhappy A females. You got the roles conflicted. She's right in her own manner. That's her showing respect to the only man that has had her back. Y'all gotta stop with y'all disruptive and hateful A comments. Go ahead, Monique, I always got your back. This is sad, but not uncommon. I think many people, both men and women, fetishize over this dynamic because of unresolved trauma. Of course, Monique is no stranger to backlash, as she would take the time to respond to the criticism on her own Instagram. She would post a portion of the interview with McCullough where she has made those comments, then share a video of the controversial author, Shazzad Ali, who is most known for writing the book, The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman. Monique's caption read, hey, my sweet sisters, for the ones that get it, you get it. For the ones that don't, you don't. Whatever works for you in your relationship. I love us. Thank you for your wisdom, Miss Shazzad Ali.
This is what you have to remember. The average Black woman in America don't get no older than about 14. So just talk to her and deal with her like you dealing with a 14-year-old. Don't come at her like you dealing with an equal, because she's not going to be able to accept that. You got to go way back. And we cut off at about 14 or 15. We don't develop and mature no further until we get some new information and accept some different information.
Just like Monique, Shazzad Ali is no stranger to controversy, as she's ruffled some feathers throughout her career for her opinions, which many consider problematic. In addition to these comments from Ali, one of the most jarring passages in her book of The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman reads, there's never an excuse for hitting a Black woman anywhere but in the mouth, because it is from that hole in the lower part of her face that all her rebellion culminates into words. Her unbridled tongue is the main reason she cannot get along with the Black man. She often needs a reminder. This does not mean that she needs or wants to be battered or beaten to a bloody pulp. However, if she ignores the authority and superiority of the Black man, there is a penalty. When she crosses this line and becomes viciously insulting, it is time for the Black man to soundly slap her in the mouth. The theme of Monique and Ali's points appear to be around submission, and Ali points out some have a different definition of what exactly submission means. Let's take a look.
Many people accuse you of wanting to see the Black woman at a point of submission. Is that where you want to see a Black woman in the 1990s?
It depends on how you define submission. Those words have a tendency to have a negative connotation for us because of how they were used against us during slavery and what we connect them to. But actually, the kind of submission that I'm referring to just means cooperation and agreement. I don't think that anybody could say that I represent a woman who is subjugated in any kind of way. I don't think that anybody could say that my personality sounds like some man has me somewhere crawling around on the ground or walking 10 paces behind him. So I'm not representing that. I'm representing strength. I'm saying that we have a lot of power. We have power to make heaven and hell for our men. And I'm saying, let's try making heaven. Let's try to build him up. If a man has his woman behind him, he will believe he can do anything. And all we need to do is to get our men to believe that they can do anything.
Joining me, we have our very own borderline analyst, Danielle Miller, but a very special guest that I'm happy to join us, Zainab Johnson, to talk all about this topic. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. How are you both doing? We'll start with Zainab. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Danielle, how you doing with the beautiful view?
I am doing well, especially because we have a little bit of breeze blowing here in the Bahamas. So we're starting to feel that fall season just a little bit. It only could dip to about 75, but we feel it.
Well, I'm happy that both of you are doing well. Let's dive into this conversation. Zainab, I want to start with you, and I want to break those clips that we saw. We saw Monique respond on the Bernie's Daughter podcast, and then we saw the response from Ali. I want to start with Monique. When you heard that, what was your reaction to it? What are your thoughts surrounding that?
My initial reaction, honestly, is I don't care. I really don't care what one woman calls the man in her life. I just have no interest in it. But I have never called any of my love interests daddy. But to be fair, I've never called my father daddy. I grew up Muslim. I call my father Abu, which is an Arabic term for the father of who, you know. And so I can't imagine being outside like, "Oh, I love you, Abu," to some to some guy. I just can't even imagine it. But yeah, I think I most of what I do, aside for comedy, does not replicate what Monique does. She's not my example, but she's also not my adversary. So I don't really care about it.
No, I'm totally with you, but I'm totally with you. When I saw it, it was just like, and plus we've heard it before, but also a lot of people are upset about it, and it kind of triggers some things. Danielle, let me bring you in. I'd love to get your reaction to it. When you saw the clip, what were your thoughts?
Oh, Monique, I know in the moment, because you could tell how she was speaking, I called him daddy because it was poetic. And I was like, hold on, wait. I had to go online and really do some searching and stuff like that to understand where she was coming from. Because I think for me, one thing that I'll always do is really try to understand where people are coming from. And I get it. Not for me, because I ain't calling nobody daddy. But for her, I get it. And she made the reference of him raising her because when I listened to an interview with her and Tamar Braxton 2 years ago, she spoke about how she had turmoil with her and her parents. And she also spoke about how, and she mentioned it, nobody was there to really tell her, look, Monique, you're wrong. So in this case, with him being there for her and him being the first person, I think, in her life that was able to check her, that's why she feels like she can say he raised me. Raise is a very strong word, but again, raise means to help grow, to help increase, to help better. I would never use the word raise, but in her situation, I understand why she's using it because she has that component of parental trauma going on. And also too, she has that component where her ego was so big, she felt like nobody could have put her in check. So yeah, Monique, I understand where you're coming from, but it ain't for me, honey. I'm not calling nobody daddy. I'll call you king, I'll call you baby, I'll call you boo. But daddy, die for me.
I think probably the people who have a hard time with it is because it sounds like a bit incestuous, right? Those are the people who are against it. But I think that what I've realized in life is we all say the same words, but our definition for those words can vary, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there are a lot of women who have had the unfortunate experience of not growing up with their father in their life in the way ideally you would want. And then some other man comes in and fills that void, either positive, successfully or not. And they call it many different things. I think for Monique, she just calls it daddy, but what she's describing, he's helped me grow, he checked me, you know what I'm saying? All of those things, any other person can describe that in a very different way other than daddy. But for Monique, those are the things that a father was supposed to do. And so that's why she's saying it.
Yeah, now, and I'll stay with you, Zainab. So she will respond to this by using a clip of Ali, in which we were able to take a look at, where Ali is talking about, most black women don't, pretty much grow past 14. And Monique is pretty much using that as her reason and saying, like, for those who get it, they get it. For those who don't, they don't. And then she thanks Ali. What are your thoughts on that clip of Shazzad Ali?
And therapists will probably always say, like, stay away from like the absolutes, right? Stay away from the always, the many. Because it's like, I imagine that when she said, most black women, it's like we 3 black women sitting here like, I feel well past 14. I don't know what you're talking about. I felt 45 when I was 4 years old. So I don't know what you're talking about, I think that what it sounds like she's speaking of, and the term daddy actually, and just that sort of like discipline with women, from what I understand, comes from like pimp mentality and lifestyle. And I do believe that all of those are symptoms of like post-traumatic stress.
Traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just that simple to me. Like that is the way the people who enslaved our ancestors dealt with us. And that has I don't feel like I'm watching elders, ancestors, intellectuals from other cultures, from the African diaspora saying, just pop her in her mouth, just pop her in her mouth. I don't feel like I'm hearing that from other tradition, other diasporas that we are connected to.
May I ask, because I know you said you were raised Muslim, what's being taught in that? What were you taught in the dynamic of you and your husband? What is that dynamic like?
I mean, you honor your husband. And my father was very strict, actually, very strict, and did things that I didn't agree with, but did a lot of things in the raising of us and my mom that I did not agree with, right? But my father is also the same. He found Islam in the same way that a lot of black men in America found Islam, which is a sense of purpose, a sense of identity, a sense of like your ownership of yourself, right? Like the Nation of Islam is a black nationalist group that used Islam as as teachings to sort of get independence for the black man in America, right? So my father has those same issues, but I don't think my father would. I don't ever feel like it was taught like, well, if you talking the wrong way to me, then I'm gonna pop you in your mouth because you're a woman. No, he popped my brother in the mouth too. It was just like, you honor me as your father, you honor your mother as your mother, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And again, I know I mentioned this earlier. I think it's really good having this conversation because we are so culturally diverse in this panel. So thank you so much for providing that. Danielle, I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to ask the same question, but I'll start early on because I want to get your reaction after seeing that Ali clip. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts were 14, like, miss, come on now. But again, I think what she was referring to is the maturity of the female mind. And there are a lot of women that are mature in some aspects, but a lot of women that aren't too emotionally aware in some aspects as well. And I think what should have been carved out in her message is the fact that sometimes as women, we don't like to take accountability for our own actions. I understand you didn't grow up with a father, going back to Monique and her parental issues. I understand you didn't grow up with a father, but I also didn't grow up with my father around. He came around when I was like 15, 16 more frequently. And I could have had trauma from that. But, I learned and I groomed and I checked myself. Like, I became self-aware. And I think a lot of times what she's trying to say is we try to stay locked into a child's mind where we could point the fingers and blame other people. But that is not all women. I'm a testament to that. That's not all women. Some women are very emotional, mature. Some women can handle themselves, and some women are way past the age of 14 in their mind. Some of us are in the age of 60 in our mind, and we're 20, 25 because of the things that we had to deal with. So again, the wording for it, I mean, it's poetic to them, but for me, I got to break it down, and I gotta dissect it in my own way, in my own terms. Yeah,
I think it's really interesting that an age-old saying is a woman can't raise a man. But for some reason, people think men can raise women. So I don't get it. Like, which one is it? And I think also too, I think being conflated in this the broad conversation is the way a woman is moved from her father to her husband traditionally. That was security. That was purely financial basis. That was purely, you don't have the legal right to be here without his last name. That's what that was. Most of us, given our traumas, are behaving as at the age in which we experienced our last trauma or our most devastating trauma. And that's not specific to a gender. Yeah. Every man is running out there trying to be the 8-year-old boy he was, or every woman is that has nothing to do with gender.
Yeah. No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because again, like you said, it doesn't have anything to do with it. Even when I saw it, it's always shocking, because the thing with Shazzad Ali, like, she'll say some things and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes some sense. But when I saw this one, I was like, I just think sometimes, yeah, it's like
I'm so sorry. I think of her in the same way I think of Dr. Umar. Like, that make a lot of sense. But wait, hold up a second. How you say something so poignant and poetic in one moment and then something out your rabbit ass mind the next?
Correct. Absolutely. So now, Danielle, we've had the opportunity to talk about submission on here, and same thing that you were saying, Zainab, or Danielle was actually saying, like, the words, the way we use words. So I think we were talking about like submission, and I think the other word was
Obedience.
Yeah, being obedient. So Shazzad, she actually has some thoughts about submission. So I want to take a look at that and come back and get you all's reaction.
Many people accuse you of wanting to see the black woman at a point of submission. Is that where you want to see a black woman in the 1990s?
Well, it depends on how you define submission. Those words have a tendency to have a negative connotation for us because of how they were used against us during slavery and what we connect them to. But actually, the kind of submission that I'm referring to just means cooperation and agreement. I don't think that anybody could say that I represent a woman who is subjugated in any kind of way. I don't think that anybody could say that my personality sounds like some man has me somewhere crawling around on the ground or walking 10 paces behind him. So I'm not representing that. I'm representing strength. I'm saying that we have a lot of power. We have power to make heaven and hell for our men. And I'm saying, let's try making heaven. Let's try to build him up. If a man has his woman behind him, he will believe he can do anything. And all we need to do is to get our men to believe that they can do anything.
Zainab, I'll come back to you. We'll hear her say something crazy, then hear something. It's like, okay, some of that makes sense. What's your thought after seeing that clip?
I mean, I'm listening and I'm like, yeah, that's reasonable. That makes sense. The only thing that I would ask that needs to be specified in conversations like that, especially now when they're divvied out to the masses, is at what cost? I think when women or anybody reacts like opposing to that, I can be cooperative and I can make life grand for you, but at what cost to me? And are we willing to have that conversation?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And Danielle, we've had this conversation as well. What are your thoughts after seeing that clip?
Yeah, I agree with her in terms of, when a man has a woman behind him saying that, I believe in you, you can really boost his ego and he can go further. But it's also too, what was mentioned at what cost. You have to be prepared to do something like that. And you have to honestly have faith within yourself that you can be 100% there for that person in the act of submission. Now, I heard she mentioned, I think, and I also agree with another statement when she said people get slavery and submission mixed up. Slavery was something that was involuntary. Like, there was no choice in slavery. Either you did what they said you did, you do or you die. It's either of the two. But submission is you making a decision to spend a life with this person, and you understanding that this person is going to lead you not down a rabbit hole, but into prosperity. So I think that's what needs to be clarified with the statements of submission.
Yeah, and I agree, because I feel like I've always been taught, especially when we're talking about like at what cost, it's always like, oh, when a man does something, like, oh, it's just a man, you got to let a man be a man. But it's like, do I? Like, for how long? Like, at what point do you grow. You know, we hear Monique talk about how he's raising her and he's helping her, but it's also like, if you're not growing as my partner, then what exactly are we doing? I'm giving you and I'm pouring out of my cup. At what point is my cup going to be poured back into?
I get, sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, please go ahead. Please jump in. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. I get it too. Like, it's jarring to hear. It is rare that you hear a grown ass woman publicly refer to another man as daddy, even if it's her actual father. It's a jarring thing, to hear. So I understand why it gets the public, riled up. And I'll go ahead and say this is probably not something people can. I think Monique likes it.
You think so? Yeah. Yeah. Or and unless you're saying sugar daddy, or daddy is literally, we put in our mind off the top, like, this is somebody that's taking care of you, and it's sort of like you said earlier, we sort of look at it in a perverted type of way when you say that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where it came from. In a lot of intersectional groups in gay community, men called their older partners daddy, who were taking care of them. They were only sexual. That's what gay men called it. Like pimps, quote unquote hoes, called their pimps, and it's kind of ironic, because I would imagine Monique's the breadwinner.
Ooh,
Wait, up, Danielle. Danielle, anytime Danielle goes, whoop, go ahead.
He's the manager. He's the manager.
Yeah, my managers take a percentage of my pie. But if I got, you know what I'm saying? I got to get 10 votes for them to get 1 vote.
I'll add this in when it comes to the word daddy, and then I want to go back to one of the comments that were left and kind of look at some statistics as well. So my thing about the daddy thing, and I'll end it here on my thoughts. For me, even if I'm married to somebody, the highest form of submission or respect is calling you husband. Like, even the words like, people when they get married, oh, you're my partner, you're my, you're my this, you're my that. No, you're my husband, you're my wife, because a husband and a wife leaves behind your mother, your father, your kids. Like, everybody becomes second to that. So for me, I just couldn't imagine calling somebody that I'm with, somebody I've chose to, as Danielle said, I've chose to submit to for my lifetime, calling them anything under a husband. Because anything, like at that point, I'm taking your role down from where it actually is, because you're not my daddy, you're my husband, because I left my father to be with my husband. He, passed me off. So yeah, I don't know if I definitely couldn't. I couldn't do it. But I do think a little bit that Monique probably likes it. But let me get to these. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Go ahead. I don't want to get myself in trouble. Go ahead.
No, So let me read this comment again, and I want to look at some statistics and come back and ask a question. So one of the comments that I read earlier said, this is why we have a generation of unmarried and unhappy females. I love looking at numbers and just kind of having the conversation, because I don't know, we'll dive in it. So I'm just going to stop it there. So they said, this is why we have a generation of unmarried and unhappy females. Danielle, we've talked about, this generation of the independent woman and how it has impacted, what our generation, what we see, the dynamic between a man and a woman. So this statistic says 70% of professional Black women are unmarried. They say 42% of all Black women and 70% of professional Black, so 42% of all Black women and 70% of professional Black women are unmarried. Zainab, I'm going to come to you. Danielle, I'll close out with you. Do you think the idea, and it doesn't have to look like what we're seeing with Monique, but just when we're talking about submission in itself, do you think that has an impact of why we're seeing statistics show professional Black women being unmarried?
I don't think that that's the case. I think that we kind of like, we like move the needle on who we place blame on. And it's like a lot of guys are like, I'm the leader, I want to lead. And it's like all the Black women that I know, we just sitting back waiting for someone to lead us. So it's like, how do you want all this power, but then blame us for all of the you know what I'm saying? Like, is it, is it on me to be married or is it on you to marry me? Does that make sense?
He who finds a wife.
Yeah, like it's not on. I mean, I imagine that it's really hard. I'm a professional Black woman that is not married, and I would love a partner, but because of my life, I do have certain standards. You know what I'm saying? I do have certain desires and wants that, the boxes that this guy would have to check off. And if he does that and our personalities meet and our goals and our morals are in line, then we can be married. I think it's just that simple. But that statement alone, like, this is why, like, what is why? I don't understand what the this is.
Yeah.
Like, this would, because Monique is calling daddy, or because we got a problem with, like, what is the this?
So I want to set like a definitive statement, because not only are you a professional Black woman, but you're a successful professional Black woman. Like,
I was trying to be modest. I make a lot more than
I'll big you up. I'll big you up. Do you have, because again, we hear people say all the time, like, oh, because you're successful, because you're a professional Black woman, because you have standards, because you have boundaries, you have an issue with submitting. I want to ask and just hear very clearly, would you have an issue to submitting to a man that, can lead you and not, take advantage of that title?
If submission by definition is supporting and growing and partner, doing everything, then I have no problem with that at all. And I never have. I watched my mom do it. I watched my grandparents do it. I come from a married family, but yeah, I have no problem. I have no problem doing that. But I'll do what I need to do. And then we have to make sure that you're bringing what you bring to the table, which is security, which is safety, which is trust, which is protection. And in that conversation, what people don't talk about is how unprotected Black women feel, regardless of their socioeconomic standing, how unprotected we feel in this world. So you asking me for complete submission while I feel completely unprotected, that seems wildly unfair.
No, I agree. Danielle, let me bring you in. I know we've talked about this, but for this conversation, I want to ask you as well. I'll start with the beginning. Do you think, submission plays a role into why we see statistics this high for professional Black women?
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons. The reason why I think it's one of the reasons is because I think a lot of us as women, we don't realize that in 100% of the time, let me rephrase, 90% of the time when you buck up on us, we in defense mode, because we've been taught the ideology to be a standard. And because we've been taught that ideology to be a standard, we go into a self-survival mode. Like, I can do this by myself. I can do that by myself. I can do this. I can do that. I don't need that. I don't need. So that literally, when you have that resting on you, people could feel that energy. And you also display that energy. If we want to go back to Monique said it herself. She said, she used to walk inside the house when she was married, and she thought she was the big boss because she was making the money. She was making all the ends meet, and that was because of how she always had to be out there grinding for herself. So I think it's an issue sometimes for us as women to know how to turn that off when we get home. You can be whoever you want to be in your office. You can be the boss. You can run that. But when you get home, I think a lot of times we don't know how to turn that off. Also, when we're trying to court people, we don't know how to turn that off. We have a wall up. And one of the things that I think that is necessary, though, I am going to talk to my brothers. If you really have an interest in this woman, then love is patient and love is kind. The same way you would want us to be patient with you, you have to be patient with us if you're really interested in us. Because one thing that she said her husband did was, when they got together, they were best friends. So he was aware of the attitude that she had. And, he used to tell her about it. He used to say, yo, bring that down, be like, he used to be patient with her and like coach her to come in that whole like, I run this type of board. So I think, yeah, that's one of the things that we do that we don't realize that we're doing. But also too, I would implore the brothers, if you really love this woman, be patient with her, point it out to her, because sometimes she doesn't, and she doesn't even realize she's doing it. And just show each other that genuine love. And I'll end with this. I think one of the main reasons in the Black community why we have an issue in terms of family and marriage and courting and dating is because we don't understand this thing as a partnership. marriage has always been painted to us like some type of prison or some type of security mechanism or any things of that sort, when it's literally supposed to be a partnership where both people are watering each other and helping each other grow and eventually helping each other develop into the greatest being God's intended them to do. So I think that's another conversation that we need to have. And I think that trumps the submission conversation, because if you have two groups, two genders, two people that understand that this is a partnership, then you'll have no problem with the submission aspect.
Yeah, and I think even in the conversations that we're seeing, and Danielle, we talk about it on the show all the time, everybody doesn't need a mic, but the conversations that we see just with, everyday people, I think the dynamic between the black man and the black woman, regardless of being in an intimate relationship, like there just needs to be a lot of in-depth conversations to get to a place where we need to be, because I am starting to see like a shift of women wanting to submit more or wanting to like, at this point, like, I'm just waiting for you to lead. Like, take the lead, take that position, but don't abuse that either. And I'm starting to, even when I look at my surroundings and the successful women that I'm surrounded with, I can't say that any of them are saying like, hey, I don't want to submit, I don't need a man. Like, that rhetoric that we hear online with people who have mics that may not need a mic. I am starting to see a change. So I don't know, I just hope that we do see a shift. I hope conversations like this can kind of open that dynamic up. We open the comments up all the time, but I hope that these conversations also are taking place at home or in your communities, in your circles, because it is needed. And yeah, the fact that we can look at old clips from the 90s and still relate to it today, or 80s, 70s, and still say, oh wow, that's still going on between the black man and the black woman. It shows that we got a lot further to go. We gotta go, and we gotta get there. But I appreciate both of you ladies for chiming in on this topic. Again, having you both bring so much value, especially with the cultural diversity that we have here. So thank you both. But before we go anywhere, Ms. Zainab, I saw before I knew you were going to be on, I think maybe it was like a week or so, I saw the trailer for your special that's out right now on Prime Video. And this is not me saying this just because you're on the show. And I was like, I cannot wait for that to come out. I cannot wait to see that, because the thing that probably caught my attention before the video actually played was the name of your special. So I want to talk about it, and it's bold, and I love it. And I'm like, I want to see it. And then as soon as I saw you actually on stage and sing the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, I have to see it. Let's talk about that just a bit before you go anywhere. What has the response been to the title of your special, and what encouraged you to name it?
I named it Hijabs Off. Very literally, I'm a Muslim woman who does not wear hijab, so that's very literal. But also, during the pandemic, while we were here experiencing so much of the civil, unjust and unrest, I was also privy to what was happening in, Middle Eastern places, women being killed for not having their hijabs on or tied right, as simple as being tied right. And I just know so many Muslim women who aesthetically present so differently, and I just wanted to make space for them. And then the part of me that's just a comedian and just oh, let's do a pun, let's do a take on. It's hats off is a compliment. Hats off is you did good, kid, And so I just wanted to tip a hats off to myself, but just include, a part of my Muslim identity in that. And that's how I got hijabs off. And some people get it for exactly what it is, and it's you are so stupid. Of course you would say this, the person, actually, my friend Muhammad, who inspired the title, he was he dared me, actually. He dared me to name it, and when I did, he was surprised. And I've gotten some backlash for it a little bit, as I do every time I talk about being Muslim. As we all know, there is a lot of racism and prejudice, even in religion, and so, but I don't choose to focus on that. I'm going to choose to focus on the positive. I ain't about to be crazy, if you got a problem with it, take that up with your therapist or your imam or you know what I'm saying? But I am only here for the people who get it and love it.
No, I absolutely love it. Last question I'll have, because you talked about navigating, and I'm using different words here, but just navigating throughout, like you said, in religion, heck, in America, we know what can happen, especially being a Black Muslim woman. How has that navigation been for you in Hollywood? Because we have conversations on here all the time about, Hollywood is the big beast and all these things. As a Black Muslim woman, how is it navigating through Hollywood for you?
I think it's the thing that's allowed me to be here. I think it's the thing that has always given me some sort of solid foundation, because I think that this can be a place, if you're not grounded, you can float away in the best way, or unfortunately the worst way, And I won't say ever that it's made me lose a job or anything like that. I feel like it's actually only helped me to identify, to be very proud with my identity. But there are, moments my entire life, because I grew up in the United States and most of the people around me are not Muslim. I've always sort of like, suppressed a part of that in me for the masses. And I've like, doing by way of stand-up, I've stopped doing that. And I feel like Hollywood has kind of like embraced, like, oh, okay, we normally see the Muslim person as a brown person, as an un-American person, you know what I'm saying? As anti-America. And it's like, oh, no, 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 no. The growing population of Muslims in America are Black people.
Yeah.
Not Arabs, not Indians, not Asian, you know what I'm saying? Black Americans.
Well, I'm very excited. As I mentioned, the special is out right now on Prime Video. I'm gonna close this out, but before I do, let's play the trailer for our audience. I think sometimes we talk about it and it's one thing, but I want to play the trailer for our audience. So I'm gonna let you introduce the trailer. Take it away.
Everybody, this is my first 1-hour comedy special, Hijabs Off, available worldwide on Prime Video. Here's the trailer. Check it out. Zainab is a very popular Arabic name. At the airport, they might look at Zainab and be like, oh, should we stop her? Johnson? Oh, no, she's probably just going to Atlanta. My parents had 13 Muslim kids. We have a stripper. She strips fully dressed, because we Muslim. I was on a date with a guy. He said, what, you think I'm a roofie you? I said, yeah, because that sounds like something a roofier would say.
The part that got me was you talking about your first name and then last name being Johnson. Like, oh, she probably just going to Atlanta. That got me for sure. But actually, something I was reminded of watching this. You said 13 kids. Yeah. How was that?
It's all I knew. I am one of 13, same mother, same father. I gotta say it, because people be like, oh, we got 22. And it's like, get your 9-step sibling having ass out of here. But it's all that I knew. Like, I think as a kid, I really wanted badly to be an only kid, because there's no privacy. You have to share a lot. It doesn't matter how good my father's job was, we were poor. It was just too many of us, But now as an adult, I really appreciate the experience. It's like these 12 other people who know what I know. They have the same history that I have. And like, we're connected by God, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, divine connection with these people. And I appreciate that. You always got somebody to borrow money from. You know what I'm saying? Somebody always trying to borrow money from you. Yeah.
I love it. Again, thank you, Zainab, for joining us. Danielle, of course, I'm not going to let you go without saying what you have. Well, I'm sorry, Zainab, how can people keep up with you, follow you on social media?
Oh, you can follow me on social media, Zainab Johnson, Zainab Johnson. Same for the website. Yeah, all the information is either on social media or my website.
Absolutely, Danielle. As mentioned, I'm not going to leave you out. What do you have coming up? And of course, how can people follow you?
Today's show was exciting. I loved it. Thank you so much, Zainab. I'm definitely gonna tune into the special. I love the name already, and then you're such a beautiful person as well. So I'm excited for that. Today's show was great. And then of course, Symphony is. Let me tell y'all how people stop me right in the Bahamas. And they be like, "Are you the girl from Comedy Hype?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And like 3 out of those 5 stops, they would say, the host is so beautiful. Aww. And I'm like, that's Symphony Thompson. So shout out to the platform. This is one of the best platforms on YouTube, one of the best platforms, networks ever. Comedy Hype. Make sure you tune into your daily dose of culture, news, and comedy. Of course, John has a motorbike that he said yesterday. I never see it before in my life, but hey. But you can catch me. I also do entertainment reporting for the local news station here called Our News. So if you're ever coming to the Bahamas planning a trip, make sure that you inbox me, hit me up, or you can watch us on ournewsbahamas.com to find out entertainment pieces that are going on around town. You can also find me on Comedy Hype every Tuesday here with the lovely Symphony Thompson. And you can follow me on Instagram at DEEA Miller. You can follow me on Twitter. I don't tweet much. Same thing. And on Facebook, Danielle DENIELLE. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel where there will be episodes of Sis coming out real soon. And that is DENIELLE. That's it for me.
Absolutely. Again, thank you both. Zainab, you were saved from the vest that John had on the show yesterday. We'll have to see you a screenshot. If you've seen Waiting to Exhale, then you've seen it all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When he's outside the window. Don't worry, we'll see you the clips. But again, thank you both ladies for joining me in on this topic. But you heard from us. Now we want to hear from you in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Monique responding to the backlash of calling her husband daddy? For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.